Look at these two girls coming home. 1:56 a.m., November 13th, 2022. They're laughing, talking about how the night went. One's pulling keys from her purse. They have less than 2.5 hours left to live. 21-year-old Kaylee Goncalves and her best friend Madison Mogan. Inseparable since 6th grade. They grew up together, picked the same college, got the same apartment. And tonight, like they'd done 1,000 times before, they're going to fall asleep in the same bed. As they walk into this house thinking only about how tired they are after a long night out, 13 kilometers away, 28-year-old criminology grad student Bryan Kohberger is already sitting in his white car. He just turned off his phone. He's driving their way. And he already knows what he's about to do. Kaylee Goncalves, 21 years old, senior at the University of Idaho, majoring in general studies. But she wasn't known for her grades. She was known for literally lighting up a room with her smile. Classmates said when Kaylee walked in, the whole vibe changed. It got warmer. She had it all planned out. In a month, she was supposed to leave for her dream trip through Europe. Then moving to Texas. New job. New life. Everything was in place. Everything was ahead of her. Madison Mogan, 21 years old. Everyone called her Maddie. Marketing major. Worked at the Mad Greek restaurant, where she ran their social media. Her friends remember how she always remembered the little things: birthdays, everyone's favorite drinks, small details that made people feel special. Maddie was planning to move to Boise after graduation, start a career in marketing, maybe open her own agency. She was already looking at apartments, already picturing the future. But here's the thing, Kaylee and Maddie had been inseparable since 6th grade. Think about that. 10 years of friendship. They grew up together, chose the same college together, got the same apartment together. Kaylee's sister said later, they were absolutely inseparable. If you saw one, the other was right there. And that night, they went to sleep in the same bed, like they'd done hundreds of times. Like best friends who trusted each other with everything. They'd stay together forever, just not the way they planned. But there were two others in the house on King Road that night. Zana Kernodle, 20 years old, came from sunny Arizona to cold Idaho for school, member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority, worked at Mad Greek with Madison. They were close friends. But the biggest thing that happened in Xana's life in recent months, she met Ethan. Friends first, then something more. His mother would later say, Xana was happier than ever. She was spending time with our whole family. This was real love. Xana was dreaming about a future with Ethan, about graduation, about life together after college, about all of it continuing. Ethan Chapin, 20 years old. Born October 29th, 2002. And here's what makes his story even more tragic. He was a triplet. Imagine that. He has a brother and sister who look exactly like him, who were supposed to live life together. Ethan was studying recreation, sport, and tourism management, member of Sigma Chi fraternity. Everyone knew him as the life of the party, the fun guy who could lift the mood in any situation. But in recent months, Ethan was just happy. He met Xana. They were together. This was his first real love. That night, Ethan stayed over in Xana's room. They got into bed together. He put his arms around her. Fell asleep peacefully next to the girl he loved. 4 students. 4 lives full of plans, dreams, love. 4 people who just wanted to fall asleep after a regular Saturday night. None of them knew that a monster was already on his way to their house. The monster, Bryan Christopher Kohberger. 28 years old at the time of the crime. On paper, the perfect candidate. Look at his resume. Associate's degree in psychology, 2018. Bachelor's degree in psychology, 2020. Master's degree in criminal justice, 2022. And in fall 2022, he starts his PhD program in criminology at Washington State University. This isn't just a student. This is someone who spent 10 years studying the criminal mind. He worked as a teaching assistant in the Criminal Justice Department. He taught students how to solve crimes, how killers think, how they get caught. He even wrote a research paper where he interviewed former criminals. His questions? What did you feel during the crime? How did you plan the attack? How did you leave the crime scene? Literally taking notes. On paper, Bryan Kohberger was someone who was supposed to catch monsters, but under that mask was something completely different. While Bryan was studying at Washington State University, just 13 kilometers from the University of Idaho, students and faculty started noticing things. 13 complaints. 13 times students, mostly women, complained about his discriminatory, harassing, and stalking behavior. One grad student called him out directly, stalker, sexual predator type. And now listen carefully. One of the professors, hearing that Kohberger might get his PhD, wrote in an official report, "Mark my words. I've worked with predators my entire career. If we give this man a PhD, in a few years, when he becomes a professor, we're going to hear that he's harassing, stalking, and sexually assaulting his students." That was a warning. That was a red flag the size of a house. Nobody listened. Washington State University didn't investigate, didn't remove him from teaching, didn't limit his access to students. They gave him a position, gave him power, gave him opportunity. But that's not all. In October and November 2022, just weeks before the murders, witnesses noticed bruises and cuts on Kohberger's face and hands, physical injuries. Where did they come from? Nobody asked, nobody investigated, and Kohberger was active on social media. A deleted Instagram account that apparently belonged to him had followed all 3 female victims, Kaylee, Madison, and Zana. He sent messages to one of them again and again. "Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you?" Like a broken record. She never responded. Maybe she never even saw the messages. They went to the requests folder that nobody checks. But for Kohberger, it didn't matter. He'd already moved from virtual surveillance to physical. From June to November 2022, his phone was detected near the house on King Road at least 12 times. 12 times. All visits except one happened late at night or early morning. This wasn't a daytime stroll. This was nighttime hunting. This was reconnaissance. He was watching, studying, planning. On paper, brilliant criminology student, future professor, someone who was supposed to fight crime. Under the mask, an obsessed stalker preparing for the perfect murder. And on November 13th, 2022, he was ready. The night, November 12th, 2022, Saturday, regular college night, 9 p.m. Zana and Ethan at a Sigma Chi frat party. They're happy, they're together. This is their last peaceful moment. 10 p.m. Kaylee and Maddie show up at the Corner Club sports bar. Kaylee posts her last Instagram, "One lucky girl to be surrounded by these people every day." She doesn't know this is the last thing she'll ever write to the world. Meanwhile, 13 kilometers away, Bryan Kohberger is sitting in his apartment in Pullman, Washington, and he does something strange. 12:26:49 a.m., exactly 26 minutes after midnight. Kohberger types into his Chrome browser, broadcastify.com, listen feed, Pullman Police and Fire Dispatch live audio feed. He wants to listen to police radio. He wants to know when they'll be called. He wants to hear their reaction to what he's planning to do. While Kaylee and Maddie are ordering food from a food truck, smiling for the camera, laughing. They have no idea someone is already preparing to hunt. 1:30 a.m. Kaylee and Maddie are standing at the food truck on the street. Camera captures their smiles, their last smiles on public video. 1:45 a.m. Zana and Ethan come home. They go up to the second floor to Zana's room. They get into bed. hold each other, fall asleep. 1:56 a.m. Kaylee and Maddie get home via Uber. Security camera catches them getting out of the car, laughing. One pulls out keys. They enter the house. Door closes. This is the last time they're seen alive. 2:47 a.m. Kohberger's phone sends its last signal from his apartment in Pullman. And then the phone goes dark. 2:47 to 4:48 a.m. 2 hours. The phone doesn't send any signals. This isn't an accident. This isn't a dead battery. Court documents state directly, this is consistent with Kohberger's attempts to conceal his location during the quadruple homicide. Why turn off your phone if you're innocent? While Kaylee and Maddie go up to the third floor to their room, they change, get into the same bed like they'd done 1,000 times, hold each other, fall asleep, while Zana is lying in Ethan's arms on the second floor. She's still awake, scrolling TikTok on her phone. Bryan Kohberger gets into his white Hyundai Elantra and drives out of Pullman. But he doesn't drive straight to Moscow. He heads south, takes a detour. Why? Maybe he thinks his phone is still being tracked, even though it's off. Maybe he needs more time to work up the nerve. 3:29 a.m. Security camera on the street captures a white car driving past 1122 King Road. First time. 3:35 a.m. Same car drives by again. Second time. Kohberger is circling, picking his moment, checking if any lights are on in the windows. 3:42 a.m. Third time. Car slows down, but drives away again. He's gathering his courage. 4:80 a.m. Zana is still awake. She orders food through DoorDash. Doorbell rings. She goes downstairs. Opens the door to the delivery person. Takes the food. Goes back to her room. Records show she's on TikTok until 4:12 a.m. She's scrolling through videos. Doesn't know she has less than 15 minutes left. 4:07 a.m. White Hyundai Elantra parks behind the house on King Road. Camera captures this. Bryan Kohberger gets out of the car. In his hands is a K-Bar USMC tactical knife, a Marine combat knife. This isn't a kitchen knife. This is a serious killing tool. He approaches the sliding glass door to the kitchen. No break-in. No shattered glass. The door was unlocked. He walks in. The house is dark. Quiet. 5 people sleeping inside. 2 on the first floor. 2 on the second. 2 on the third. Kohberger goes up to the third floor, his boots quietly stepping on the stairs. He knows the layout. He'd studied this house 12 times. He enters Kaylee and Maddie's room, sees 2 girls in one bed, sleeping, defenseless. What happens next can only be described with one word: pure evil. Kaylee receives over 30 stab wounds. Her face becomes unrecognizable. Madison a deep wound to the face. She falls next to her best friend's body. They stay together, in one bed. Like always, only now forever. Kohberger leaves a tan leather knife sheath on the bed. He doesn't even notice, or notices, but it's too late to stop. He goes down to the second floor. 4:12 a.m. Zana is still awake. She hears something. Maybe footsteps. Maybe sounds of struggle upstairs. Dylan Mortensen, a roommate sleeping on the second floor, wakes up. She hears what sounds like Kaylee's voice. Someone's here. Then crying. Then a male voice, calm, almost gentle. It's okay, I'm going to help you. Kohberger enters Zana's room. She sees him. Their eyes meet. A fight begins. Zana doesn't give up. She screams. She fights back. Her hands come up, defending against the blade. The medical examiner would later say, she fought. She fought back, and she fought hard. Kohberger stabs her over 50 times. 50. This isn't just murder. This is rage. This is sadism. Zana falls to the floor of her bedroom, her blood on the floor, her future with Ethan on the floor. Ethan was sleeping the whole time. He doesn't even understand what's happening. Kohberger approaches the bed and delivers several stabs. Arterial blood sprays on the wall. 20 years of life, over in seconds. 4:17 a.m. Kohberger walks down the stairs. And in the first-floor living room, he runs into Dylan Mortensen. She'd opened her door. They lock eyes. Killer and witness. Dylan sees a figure in black clothing and a mask covering mouth and nose. Sees bushy eyebrows. Sees him walk past her toward the sliding door. She stands there, frozen in shock, doesn't understand what she's seeing. Kohberger does nothing, just walks past, exits through the sliding door. 4:20 a.m. White Hyundai Elantra speeds away from King Road. Camera captures this. 4 students dead. 2 witnesses alive, but in shock. Dylan locks herself in her room and doesn't come out until morning. 4:48 a.m. Kohberger's phone turns back on. South of Moscow, he's driving back to Pullman. But this isn't the end. 9:12 a.m. Kohberger's phone is near the King Road house again. He came back. Why? To see his handiwork? To check if police had arrived? To retrieve the knife sheath he'd left? We don't know, but he's there, watching. The bodies haven't been found yet. Police haven't been called yet. The house is quiet. Kohberger sits in his car and waits. 11:58 a.m. Finally, a 911 call. One of our roommates is unconscious. Police arrive. And what they find inside shocks even seasoned detectives. 4 bodies, blood on all 3 floors. Knife is gone. Killer is gone. And the hunt begins. The investigation, 47 days. That's how long passed between the murders and the arrest. 47 days when the victims' families demanded answers. When university students were afraid to leave their dorms. When the entire town of Moscow, Idaho lived in fear. Who did this? Why? And most importantly, is he still out there? Moscow Police. This is a small-town department. The last murder in town was 7 years ago. They'd never dealt with anything like this. 4 bodies. No obvious motive, no murder weapon, no break-in. But they had 2 things: surviving witness Dylan Mortensen and security cameras. Dylan told investigators what she saw that night. Figure in black clothing and mask. About 5'10", roughly 178 centimeters. Athletic build. And one detail that would become key: bushy eyebrows. But that wasn't enough. Investigators started reviewing hundreds of hours of security footage from the King Road area, and they found him. White car, not just driving by. Circling. Hunting. Footage shows. White sedan drives past the victim's house 3 times, starting at 3:29 a.m. On the 4th time, the car stops, stays in the area for almost an hour. Then at 4:20 a.m., camera captures the same car speeding away from the King Road area. The timing perfectly matches Dylan's testimony. This was the killer's car. But what exact model? The image is grainy. Quality is poor. Investigators brought in FBI experts. An analyst studied every frame, every pixel. And he gave an answer. Hyundai Elantra, white. Model year 2011 to 2016. Now police had a specific vehicle. November 29, 16 days after the murders, a WSU campus police officer runs a database search. He's looking for white Hyundai Elantras, registered to WSU students or staff. He gets a hit. White 2015 Hyundai Elantra, registered to a grad student named Bryan Kohberger. Now they have a name. The officer pulls up Kohberger's driver's license photo, looks at the face, and sees it. Bushy eyebrows. Exactly like Dylan described. The puzzle is coming together. Investigators get a warrant for Kohberger's phone records, and what they find turns suspicion into certainty. Kohberger's phone was detected near 11 to 22 King Road at least 12 times between June and November 2022. 12 times. And all these visits except one happened late at night or early morning. This isn't coincidence. This isn't randomly passing by. This is stalking. This is reconnaissance. He'd been watching them for months. But the creepiest part? The data from the night of the murders. 2:47 a.m. Kohberger's phone last pings from his Pullman apartment. Then the phone goes dark. From 2:47 to 4:48 a.m., 2 hours of complete silence. Phone doesn't ping any cell towers. Court documents call it exactly what it was: an attempt to conceal his location during the murders. 4:48 a.m. Phone turns back on. South of Moscow on the highway back to Pullman. And here's what's truly chilling. 9:12 a.m. that same day, 5 hours after the murders, Kohberger's phone is detected near King Road again. He came back to the crime scene. Bodies haven't been found yet. Police haven't been called yet. Why did he return? Wanted to see his work? Wanted to check if he'd been found? Wanted to retrieve something he left? Now investigators had everything: car, phone data, physical description, but they needed one last decisive piece of evidence. They needed to place Bryan Kohberger inside that house. They needed his DNA, and they found it. On the bed next to Madison and Kaylee's bodies lay a tan leather K-bar knife sheath. On the snap of that sheath was a single source of male DNA. This was the killer's DNA. But Kohberger's DNA wasn't in the national database. Investigators couldn't just compare and get a match. They needed a sample of his DNA. And this is where a brilliant, almost spy movie operation begins. December 2022. Kohberger finishes his semester at WSU. He's going home to Pennsylvania for Christmas. His father flies to Washington, and they drive across the country together in the white Hyundai Elantra. What Kohberger doesn't know, he's being followed. FBI is tracking his every move. December 15th, Indiana. They get pulled over by police twice in one day.
Hello.
How you doing?
How y'all doing today? Good, good. Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van. Pulled you over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay. Cool. Where are you headed?
Well, we're coming from WSU, and we're standing early.
What's WSU?
Yeah, I go to the university basically. That is watching
So we're okay. I'm having a hard time hearing you because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University,
Yeah.
and you're going where? Oh,
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
oh, okay.
Yeah. We're slightly clutching because we're driving for hours.
Hours, days.
Hours we're driving.
Yeah.
Almost.
Okay. And what?
Kohberger is calm, polite. Talks to the officer like nothing happened. His father sits next to him. The officer doesn't know he stopped a man who stabbed 4 college students 3 weeks ago. He lets them go with a warning. Kohberger arrives home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, spends Christmas with family, acts completely normal. But FBI agents are already there. They don't arrest him. Not yet. They're watching, and most importantly, they're watching his trash. December 27th, 2022. Agents in Pennsylvania collect trash from the Kohberger family home. They're looking for anything with his DNA: used tissue, water bottle, disposable razor. They find what they need. Sample is sent to Idaho State Lab. Lab techs run a familial DNA match test. They're not looking for a direct match to Bryan. They're looking for a match to a close relative. Result comes back. DNA from the trash is an almost exact match to the father of the person whose DNA was on the knife sheath. Kohberger's father passed his genes to his son, and those genes became his indictment. Now they have everything: car, phone data, physical description, and DNA. December 29th, 2022, an arrest warrant is issued for Bryan Christopher Kohberger. 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of burglary. The hunt is over. The arrest, December 30th, 2022. 4 a.m. Quiet neighborhood in the Pocono Mountains, Pennsylvania. The Kohberger family is asleep. This is the last peaceful morning they'll ever see. Suddenly explosions, flashbang grenades, screaming. Police! Get down! Pennsylvania State Police SWAT team storms the house. They smash doors, windows. They know who they're dealing with. They know this man killed 4 people with a knife. They're not taking chances. Bryan Kohberger wakes up to the sound of breaking glass. Agents burst into his room, order him to the floor, put him in handcuffs. He doesn't resist, doesn't even try to run. Just calmly allows himself to be arrested. When agents search his room, they find something weird. Kohberger is wearing latex medical gloves. In his room trash, neatly separated into individual Ziploc bags. He knew he was being watched. He tried to hide his DNA. But it was too late. During the house search, police seize over 70 items. Black clothing, gun, knives, electronics. Everything becomes evidence. Kohberger waives his right to an extradition hearing. He agrees to fly back to Idaho to face trial. During the flight, officers escorting him would later report he was calm, even chatty, asked questions about the case. Did they arrest anyone else? Like it was an academic discussion, like he was studying someone else's crime, not his own. January 5th, 2023. Kohberger appears in Idaho court. Judge reads the charges. 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of burglary. If found guilty, the penalty could be death. How do you plead to these charges? The judge asks. Kohberger looks directly at the judge and says 2 words, not guilty. And the silence begins. 2 years, 3 years. Kohberger stays silent. His lawyers prepare the defense. Prosecution prepares the case. Court hearings drag on. Trial date gets postponed again and again. The victims' families wait. They want answers. They want to know why their children were killed. They want to hear the motive. But Kohberger doesn't say a word. His lawyers present an alibi. On the night of the murders, Bryan was alone in his car. He often drove at night. Just drove and thought. It was his habit. They challenge the DNA, challenge the phone data, challenge everything. Prosecution prepares for battle. They have mountains of evidence, car, phone, DNA on the knife sheath, Dylan's testimony. Everything points to one person. And everyone knows, if the case goes to trial and the jury finds him guilty, Bryan Kohberger will get the death penalty. But in July 2025, weeks before trial is set to begin, something unexpected happens. July 2nd, 2025. Bryan Kohberger takes a plea deal. He pleads guilty to all 4 murders. All 4. No conditions, no exceptions. Why? Because the evidence was crushing, and he chose life over death. If he'd gone to trial and been found guilty, which was almost guaranteed, prosecution would have sought the death penalty. Idaho has the death penalty. They recently brought back firing squad as an execution method. With the plea deal, Kohberger gets life in prison without parole. He'll live. He'll just never walk free. July 23rd, 2025. Sentencing day. Judge Stephen Hippler looks at Kohberger and asks, "Do you plead guilty to the murder of Kaylee Goncalves?" "Yes." "Do you plead guilty to the murder of Madison Mogen?" "Yes." "Do you plead guilty to the murder of Zana Kernodle?" "Yes." "Do you plead guilty to the murder of Ethan Chapin?" "Yes." The judge reads the sentence. 4 consecutive life sentences without parole. They'll be served consecutively. Even if by some incredible reason one conviction gets overturned, 3 more remain, plus 10 years for burglary, $50,000 fine plus $20,000, $5,000 for each victim going to the families. And most importantly, Kohberger waives his right to appeal. He can never challenge this sentence. This is the end. Final and absolute. Bryan Kohberger, age 30, will go to Idaho State Prison for the rest of his life. He'll eat vegan prison food, rice and beans. He'll sit in a solitary cell. He'll grow old behind bars, knowing he'll never see freedom again. The victims' families are present in the courtroom, but their reactions differ. Madison Mogen's parents release a statement. "This is the best possible outcome. We avoided a torturous trial. Our daughter can rest in peace. Justice has been served." Ethan Chapin's family agrees. For them, it's relief. The killer confessed. He'll never get out. This is closure. But Kaylee Gonkov's family is furious. They release an angry statement. "This is a betrayal. The prosecutor and the state of Idaho failed us. Kohberger got the easy way out to avoid accountability. He didn't give us answers. He didn't explain why. He should have told us the motive. He should have explained why he chose our daughter. But he's silent. He bought himself life at the cost of our right to know the truth." Kaylee's father tells reporters, "He murdered 4 innocent students. He should have paid the ultimate price. He should have gotten the death penalty." But instead, the prosecution gave him a deal, gave him life, for silence. And here's where the tragedy goes even deeper, because the most important question remains unanswered. Why? The lawsuit. But the story doesn't end with the sentence, because there's a question haunting everyone who knows about this case. Could this tragedy have been prevented? January 2000, just 6 months after Kohberger's sentencing, the victims' families file a civil lawsuit. Not against Bryan Kohberger. He's already in prison forever. They sue Washington State University. The lawsuit claims WSU knew Bryan Kohberger was a predator and did nothing. Here are the facts laid out in court documents. From the moment Kohberger arrived at WSU in August 2022, just 3 months before the murders, he received 13 complaints. 13. Students, mostly women, complained about his discriminatory, harassing, and stalking behavior. He got too close, said inappropriate things, looked at them in ways that made women feel unsafe. One grad student directly called him a stalker and sexual predator type. But the scariest part, what one WSU professor wrote. When he heard Kohberger might get a PhD and become a professor, he wrote in an official university report, "Mark my words, I've worked with predators my entire career. If we give this man a PhD, in a few years, when he becomes a professor, we're going to hear that he's harassing, stalking, and sexually assaulting his students." Read that again. A professor, someone who professionally studies criminal behavior, warned the university that Kohberger was a predator. WSU received this warning. WSU knew about 13 complaints. WSU saw the red flags. And what did the university do? Nothing. They didn't investigate. Didn't remove him from teaching. Didn't limit his access to students. They gave him a teaching assistant position, gave him power over students, gave him opportunity. The family's lawsuit claims, if WSU had responded appropriately to these complaints, Kaylee, Madison, Zana, and Ethan would be alive. This tragedy was predictable and preventable. The system saw the signs, saw the red flags, and did nothing. But there's another question. A question that's even scarier. Why did Bryan Kohberger kill 4 students he didn't know? This is the darkest question of the entire case, and we have no answer. Kohberger didn't know any of them. There was no romantic connection, no personal conflict, no financial motive, nothing that could logically explain why a 28-year-old grad student drove to a neighboring town and stabbed 4 random people. Investigators combed through social media, interviewed hundreds of people, examined every connection. Here's what they found. Mad Greek restaurant. Kohberger ate there at least twice. Madison and Zana worked there. Maybe he saw them. Maybe they served him. Instagram. A deleted account that apparently belonged to Kohberger followed all three female victims, Kaylee, Madison, Zana. Phone data. His phone was near their house 12 times. He clearly knew where they lived. DMs. He sent repetitive messages to one of them. Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Again and again. She never responded. But that's it. That's the entire connection. Kohberger never met them in person. They didn't know who he was. To them, he was just another stranger on the internet they ignored. So why did he choose them? Forensic psychologists suggest Kohberger was obsessed with the idea of murder. His PhD research in criminology, his work with professors who studied serial killers, his research paper about criminals' thoughts during crimes, all of it was a projection of his own dark fantasy. Maybe he saw them at the restaurant or on Instagram and chose randomly. Maybe he liked their house isolated on the edge of town with multiple entrances. Perfect target. Maybe it didn't matter to him who they were. He just needed victims. Any victims. But this is all theory. This is all speculation. Bryan Kohberger. The only person who knows the truth has never explained why. He didn't leave a diary with victims' names, no lists, no trophies, no manifesto. When police searched his apartment, they found nothing that explained motive. Investigators interrogated him. He stayed silent. His lawyers never revealed motive. And when he took the plea deal and confessed to the murders, he gave no explanation, just 4 words. Yes, 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 yes. The Goncalves family is right to be angry. Because Kohberger bought himself life at the cost of their right to know. Why did he stalk their house 12 times? Why did he choose that specific night? Why did he kill Kaylee and Madison together in one bed? Why did he go down and kill Zana and Ethan? Why did he spare Dylan and Bethany? These questions will remain unanswered forever. And this might be the cruelest part of this story, because the victims' families live not only with loss, they live with an eternal question. Why? Bryan Kohberger sits in Idaho State Prison. By reports, he's quiet, withdrawn, eats vegan prison food, keeps to himself, doesn't talk to other inmates, and according to guards, he's obsessed with himself. He watches all the news about his case, reads every article, studies every report, as if he's still a researcher, still a criminology student studying a crime. Only this time his own. He knows the answer to why, but he'll never tell. The legacy: Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Zana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin. 4 names. 4 lives cut short in one night. 4 students who just wanted to fall asleep after a regular Saturday night. But their story doesn't end on that bed in the house on King Road. 1 year after the murders, the University of Idaho made a decision. The house at 1122 King Road must be demolished. They called it a grim reminder of the tragedy. In December 2023, bulldozers razed the house to the ground. 3 floors where students lived. The staircase the killer climbed. The room where Kaylee and Madison slept for the last time. The room where Zana fought to the end. All of it gone, turned to rubble. But memory doesn't disappear. Where the house stood is now a memorial garden. The university plans to build a place for reflection there, a place where students can come and remember the 4 friends they lost. And something incredible happened, something symbolic. After Kaylee's death, her sister Alyssa gave birth to a daughter, and she named her Theodora Maddie Kay. Maddie Kay. Madison and Kaylee. 2 best friends who were inseparable since 6th grade, who went to sleep in the same bed for the last time, who stayed together forever. Now their names live on in this child, and here's what's truly chilling. Theodora's birth time, 4:21 a.m., the same minute her aunt and cousin were murdered. Hospital room number 1113. 1113, the date of the murders? Coincidence? Or something more? Kaylee's family believes it's a sign. that Kaylee and Madison are still here, that their love, their friendship, their light lives on. But there's another legacy, a legacy of failure. The civil lawsuit against WSU is still ongoing. The families are demanding change. They're demanding that universities take student complaints about stalkers and predators seriously, that professors who see red flags are listened to. Because if WSU had acted after the first complaint, after the fifth, after the 10th, Kaylee, Madison, Zana, and Ethan would be alive. The system failed them, and that system must change. So what does this story teach us? Trust your gut. If someone makes you uncomfortable, leave. Don't rationalize their behavior. Don't tell yourself, I'm overreacting, or he's just awkward. WSU students felt something was wrong with Kohberger. 13 people complained. They trusted their instincts, but the system ignored them. Dylan Mortensen heard screams that night, heard a male voice, saw a figure in a mask, but she was in shock. She locked herself in her room and didn't call police until morning. Nobody blames her. The psychology of fear is powerful, paralyzing. But this story shows, if something feels wrong, act, call police, wake the neighbors, scream. Politeness isn't worth your life. We live in a society that teaches us to be polite, not make scenes, not hurt people's feelings. Especially women are taught to smile when uncomfortable, go along so they don't seem rude. But sometimes rudeness can save your life. If a stranger gets too close, say no loudly. If someone's stalking you on social media, block and report. If you see someone watching your house, call police. Evil often wears a familiar face. Bryan Kohberger wasn't some homeless psycho off the street. He was a PhD student, a teaching assistant, someone parents sent to school to become a professor. On paper, he was perfect. Under the mask, a monster. The most dangerous predators are those who know how to hide in plain sight. Kaylee, Madison, Zana, and Ethan did everything right. They came home together. They lived in a safe neighborhood. They didn't walk alone at night, but even that wasn't enough. Because sometimes the threat doesn't come from outside. It's already inside, watching, planning, waiting for the moment. This story shouldn't have happened. 4 students shouldn't have died. The system should have protected them, but the system failed, and now all we have left is to remember them. Kaylee, who lit up the room. Madison, who remembered every little thing about the people she loved. Zana, who fought to the end. Ethan, who just wanted to be with the girl he loved. 4 lives. 4 futures that will never happen. Bryan Kohberger sits in prison. He'll be there for the rest of his days. But justice won't bring them back. Nothing will bring them back. All we can do is make sure their story wasn't in vain. If this story made you think, subscribe to the channel. Here we break down cases everyone should know about. Cases that show how easily the system can fail and how important it is to trust your instincts. Write in the comments, do you think this tragedy could have been prevented? Should WSU have acted after the first complaint about Kohberger? And most importantly, what would you have done if you'd heard screams that night? Remember, Kaylee, Madison, Zana, Ethan, their names, their light, their memory, may they never be forgotten.